My name is Thelma Thornton. I'm 67 years old. Last March, my son forgot to end a phone call. Through the speaker, I heard him say, "She has to be put in a nursing home. The house appraises at $1.2 million. I stood there, bare feet on cold tile, coffee dripping into the pot behind me. But the worst part wasn't what Grant said. The worst part was what his mother-in-law said next, and the 14 minutes I stood in my kitchen, listening without making a sound. They didn't know I heard. They went on a trip that weekend, the three of them, Grant, his wife, Paige, her mother, Judith. They came back 4 days later. They found a folded note on the front door, and when they read it, they screamed. Welcome back to Alpha Mom Stories. This is where we share stories of mothers who stood their ground when everyone else expected them to sit down. Drop a comment and be sure to subscribe. I was a night shift nurse, 35 years at County General's pediatric ward. I started at 22, back when the building still had those green linoleum floors that squeaked under your clogs at 2 in the morning. Every night, 11 p.m. to 7 a.m., I'd kiss Grant's forehead while he slept, clip my badge to my scrubs, and drive 14 minutes to the hospital in the dark. Raymond and I bought the house in 1989. $92,000. He was a mailman. I was a nurse. We signed the papers at a card table in a title office that smelled like burnt coffee. We paid it off in 2009, the same year Grant graduated from college. 20 years of double shifts, and Raymond walking his route in January, sleet, and we shook hands across a kitchen table and said, "It's ours." Then Raymond got sick. Pancreatic cancer. 7 years ago now. I nursed him at home for the last 8 months. I'd spent my whole career keeping other people's children alive. I wasn't going to let someone else hold my husband's hand at the end. After he passed, I kept working 2 more years, retired at 62. Now I volunteer at the hospital on Mondays and Wednesdays. I hold the babies in the NICU, who don't have anyone to hold them. I tend Raymond's rose garden, 14 bushes he planted over the years, one for every season he said the yard needed more color. And I carry my nursing badge on my keychain, which is silly because I haven't clocked in for 5 years. But 35 years of reaching for that badge at the door, your fingers don't forget. I didn't know it then, but every night shift I'd ever worked was training me for what was coming. I love that house the way you love a body you've healed, because you remember what it took to keep it standing. Grant was a good boy. I need you to know that first. He ate cereal alone at the kitchen table from age 8 because I was at the hospital and Raymond left for his mail route at 5 a.m. He dressed himself, packed his own lunch, walked to the bus stop in the dark, same as me. But here's the thing about sacrifice. The person making it knows the reason. The person living inside it just knows the absence. Grant told his 4th grade teacher once, "My mom works at night because she'd rather be with sick kids than with me." The teacher called me. I sat in my car in the hospital parking lot and cried for 12 minutes. Then I went back inside and intubated a 6-week-old with RSV. That's the job. He grew up quiet. Married Paige Calloway at 31. She had straight teeth and a family with a 3-car garage. Grant liked her confidence, the way she walked into a restaurant like she'd already been seated. He was a regional sales director for a medical device company by then. $185,000 a year. Good money, honest work. But they spent like they made $240. Credit cards, a second mortgage. Paige's friends took trips to Portugal. Paige reposted old beach photos from 2 years ago. Grant kept the statements in his briefcase where Paige couldn't see them. $220,000 in debt and climbing. The last time Grant came for dinner was 3 months before the phone call. He measured my kitchen door frame with his phone's ruler app. He thought I didn't notice. I'm a nurse. I spent 35 years watching patients who thought no one was looking. I noticed. I just didn't say anything. That was my first mistake. Paige grew up in a house with cathedral ceilings. Her mother had a cleaning lady named Rosa who came twice a week. Paige learned to set a table with 3 forks before she learned to do laundry. She became an interior designer. Good eye, steady hand, the kind of woman who could look at a room and tell you what was wrong with it in 4 seconds. She married Grant, assuming medical industry meant money. It does if you're a surgeon. If you're a sales rep driving a leased Audi to hospital purchasing departments in central Ohio, it means something different. Paige started visiting me every Saturday, just checking in Thelma. She'd bring scones from that bakery on 5th. She'd hug me at the door and compliment my hydrangeas. But she photographed every room. She opened cabinets. She ran the faucets and tested the water pressure in both bathrooms. She measured the closets with her eyes the way I measure a newborn's breathing automatic professional precise. One Saturday, she said it out loud. Your mother rattles around in 2,400 square feet alone. Meanwhile, we're stacked in a 3-bedroom with Lily's toys in the hallway. On my fridge, there's a drawing Lily made when she was 7. Crayons on construction paper, a yellow house, a yellow sunstick, figures holding hands. She wrote across the top in wobbly letters, Grandma Thelma's house. I'd looked at that drawing every morning for 3 years. The thing that confirmed it was small. Paige excused herself to use my bathroom. When she came out, I caught the reflection in the hallway mirror, her phone screen, Zillow, my address. The estimated value glowed in blue $1,210,000. She smiled at me. Love the new towels, Thelma. Judith Calloway is Paige's mother, 66 years old, retired real estate agent, 30 years selling luxury homes in the western suburbs. She looks at property the way a butcher looks at a side of beef, by the cut, by the weight, by what someone will pay. I met Judith plenty of times before I understood her. Sunday dinners at Grant and Paige's house. She'd bring wine that cost more than my grocery bill and set it on the counter like a flag. She'd ask about my garden. She'd inspect my hands while I answered. You still garden at your age. Aren't you worried about falling? She said it with a smile. Everything Judith said came with a smile the way a needle comes with an alcohol swab. Over the months, the comments landed like scheduled doses. To Paige, have you thought about Mom's long-term plan? To Grant, that house is a liability for one person. To both of them over dessert, in my professional opinion, that property is worth 1.1 to 1.3. Then came the Sunday I wasn't supposed to hear. I'd gone to the kitchen to wash the serving dish. The door was cracked. Judith was talking to Paige in the hallway, her voice low but not low enough. It's time she contributed to your future. 7 words. That's all it took. 7 words, and I understood the architecture of what was being built around me. I didn't say anything. I finished the dishes. I dried my hands on the towel Paige had picked out. I drove home. I sat in Raymond's rose garden until the motion sensor light clicked off and the only illumination was the street lamp 2 houses down. The roses smelled like copper and rain. The violations came gently. That's how they always do. I've seen it in hospitals. The first sign of organ failure isn't a crash. It's a number that's slightly off on a chart nobody's reading. Paige redecorated my guest room while I was volunteering at the hospital. She removed Raymond's reading chair, the brown leather one with the cracked armrest where he'd sit with his coffee in the sports section. She replaced it with a modern daybed in dove gray. Just freshening things up, Thelma. I came home and stood in the doorway for a long time. The room smelled like new fabric and someone else's taste. Then my neighbor Dorothy caught me at the mailbox. Your friend was here today. The older woman, she was measuring your front porch with a tape measure. I didn't have any friends who carried tape measures. Judith had been to my house while I was gone. Grant called that week. His voice had that careful tone the one patients' families use when they want something. Mom, do you know where the house deed is? Just need it for insurance purposes. I told him I'd look for it. I knew exactly where it was. In the fireproof box under my bed where Raymond had put it 8 years ago with a note I hadn't read carefully enough. That evening I called Rosemary Delgado, my best friend since our kids were in 3rd grade together. Retired social worker, 30 years specializing in elder abuse cases. I said, something isn't right with how they're looking at my house. Rosemary's voice didn't change. Looking at it or pricing it. I checked my mailbox the next morning. A letter from a real estate agent I'd never contacted thanking me for the inquiry about listing your property. I never made an inquiry. I touched my nursing badge on the keychain. Habit. 35 years of clocking in. Saturday morning, March 15th. The coffee was still dripping. My phone rang Grant's name on the screen. I picked up. Hey, Mom just wanted to... Then muffled sounds. A chair scraping, the clatter of a phone being set down on a hard surface. He hadn't ended the call. I should have hung up. I know that. A decent person would have said, Grant, I can still hear you, and ended it clean. But I'm not decent. I'm a nurse. And when vital signs start dropping, you don't look away. You watch. 14 minutes. I timed it. The coffee finished. I didn't pour it. Grant's voice, first casual, like he was ordering lunch. She has to be put in a nursing home. The house appraises at one point $2 million. We pay off our mortgage, Judith gets her condo renovation, and Mom gets, care. Page next. The Sunrise Meadows tour went well. Semi-private room, $4,200 a month. She paused. Her Medicare should cover most of it. Then Judith, laughing. About time she was useful. They discussed the timeline like a project plan. Get a compliant doctor to sign off on cognitive decline. File a healthcare proxy. List the house by June. Close by August. 3 lives improved. 1 life filed away. Grant said she won't fight it. Mom's never fought anything in her life. I stood in my kitchen, bare feet on the tile. The coffee went cold. I didn't cry. I didn't hang up. I listened until Grant's voice said, All right, I gotta run. And the line went dead on its own. I put the phone on the counter. I walked through the back door to the rose garden. I sat on Raymond's bench, the cedar one with his initials carved into the armrest by Lily when she was 5. The morning sun hit the roses the way it always did. I touched my nursing badge. He thinks I never fought anything. I'd spent 35 years reading vital signs. I knew what a flat line sounded like. This was one. Monday morning, I went to my volunteer shift like nothing happened. That's what you do. In the NICU, when a baby's oxygen drops and the alarms are screaming, the first thing you do is breathe. Slow. Steady. Then you act. Panic is for people who haven't been trained. I held a newborn for an hour. 6 days old, 4 pounds 2 ounces, born to a mother who was 17 and scared. I rocked him in the blue vinyl chair by the window and watched the parking lot fill up with the morning shift. After my shift, I sat in my car in the hospital lot. I called Rosemary. I told her everything. The phone call, 14 minutes, Grant's voice, Paige's research, Judith's laugh, the timeline doctor proxy listing close, everything. Rosemary let me talk for 11 minutes without interrupting. Then she said, I've seen this 100 times, Thelma. It has a name, elder financial exploitation, and here's what you're going to do. Her voice was the voice she used in depositions, flat, precise, no room for argument. Document everything, dates, times, exact words. She paused. Change nothing in your routine. Smile when they visit. Answer when they call. Her voice dropped. And do not, Thelma, listen to me. Do not confront them. I gripped the steering wheel. Why not? The moment you confront them, they'll destroy evidence and change the story. Right now, they think you don't know. That's your only advantage. She gave me a checklist. Schedule a cognitive evaluation. Secure your original documents. Get a certified copy of your house deed. Find an elder law attorney. She had a name, Martin Hale, who'd handled cases like mine for 20 years. I wrote it all on the back of a hospital parking receipt. 4 steps, 4 lines, the kind of list that saves a life. That night, I pulled the fireproof box from under my bed. It was gray metal, heavy with a combination lock Raymond had set to our wedding date. I opened it and took out the deed. I'd seen this document before, signed it in 1989 alongside Raymond at that card table. But I'd never read the amendment, the 2 pages Raymond had added in 2017, 2 years before the cancer took him, when he was still healthy, still walking his route, still pruning the roses on Saturday mornings. The language was legal, formal, but the meaning was plain. Property transfer requires the in-person notarized signature of both grantees or the surviving grantee. No power of attorney conservatorship or proxy shall supersede this requirement. I read it 3 times. Then I found the note. Folded once, tucked behind the amendment page in Raymond's handwriting, the same blocky print he used to address envelopes on his mail route. Thelma, I added this in 2017. I've seen what happens to widows. Don't let anyone take your home without looking you in the eye, R. I held that note against my chest. The paper was 7 years old. The edges had yellowed. His handwriting hadn't faded. You knew, didn't you, even then? Raymond was a mailman, 41 years, 6 days a week. He delivered divorce papers and eviction notices and foreclosure letters to houses on his route. He saw what happened to women who outlived their husbands. He saw the sons who showed up with moving trucks. He never said anything to me about it. He just went to a lawyer and added 2 paragraphs to a deed. Raymond was a mailman. He delivered things that mattered, even after he was gone. I photographed the deed and the note, sent both to Rosemary, then I put the box back under the bed. They accelerated. That's the clinical term for what happens when a disease stops being slow. 1 week, everything is stable. The next week, every number on the chart is moving in the wrong direction. Grant and Paige started visiting twice a week. The questions got sharper the way a cough gets wetter before pneumonia sets in. Mom, when was your last checkup? Have you been forgetting things lately? Did you leave the stove on yesterday? I could have sworn I smelled gas. I hadn't left the stove on. There was no gas smell. But now it was on record, Grant asking Thelma's memory in question. Paige photographed the house openly now. No pretense. She walked through with her phone raised like a real estate agent shooting a listing. For my design portfolio, Thelma, your home has such beautiful bones. Beautiful bones, like she was prepping an autopsy. Grant asked about the mortgage over dinner. I told him the truth paid off in 2009. He glanced at Paige across the table. She glanced back. The look lasted less than a second. I timed it the way I'd time an irregular heartbeat, brief but diagnostic. Then Judith called me directly. That was new. Thelma, dear, I found the most lovely community tour. Would you like to come just to see? I kept my voice warm. That sounds interesting, Judith. Let me check my calendar. I hung up, set the phone down. That's when I saw the email notification, a message from Grant's Gmail forwarded by accident to the family group chat. He'd hit reply all instead of reply. Subject line, RE742 Birchwood Lane listing preparation. 742 Birchwood Lane, my address, the house I'd lived in for 36 years. They weren't just looking anymore. They were listing. I walked into Dr. Kaplan's office at County General on a Tuesday. He'd been my colleague for 20 years. We'd shared vending machine coffee at 3 a.m. during Code Blues. He'd seen me calculate medication dosages in my head while holding a screaming infant. He knew my mind the way a mechanic knows an engine by the sound it makes under pressure. Full cognitive evaluation, I said. Montreal Cognitive Assessment, clock drawing test, memory recall, executive function, everything. He leaned back. Thelma, I've known you 20 years. You're sharper than most of my 30-year-olds. He paused. What's this about? Someone is going to tell you I'm losing my mind, David. I want you to have the evidence first. He didn't ask who. He didn't ask why. 20 years of working together at 3 in the morning teaches you when a colleague is serious. He pulled out the forms. I took every test, drew the clock, named the animals, recalled the 5 words after 15 minutes, counted backward from 100 by sevens. Perfect score. Every section, not a single point missed. Dr. Kaplan signed the evaluation, dated it. Then he added an unsolicited note at the bottom. Something I hadn't asked for, something no one told him to write. Patient presence with exceptional cognitive function for age. Any claim of incapacity would be inconsistent with clinical observation. He handed me the original. File this somewhere safe. I made 3 copies, one for Rosemary, one for Martin Hale, the elder law attorney I'd retained that week, one in the fireproof box under my bed next to Raymond's note. 35 years in medicine taught me one thing that applies to everything else in life. Paperwork saves lives. It saved mine. I opened the email that night, the one Grant had forwarded to the family group chat by mistake. My fingers were steady. A nurse's hands don't shake when they're reading bad news. They shake after. It was a listing draft from a realtor named Craig Holt. I'd never heard of him. Later I'd learn he was Judith's nephew, not a licensed agent himself, just the one who connected them with one. The email had everything. Photos of my house, Paige's photos, the ones from her design portfolio, my kitchen, my bedroom, Raymond's rose garden shot from the upstairs window, the hallway with the mirror where I'd caught the Zillow reflection, every room measured, noted, staged in a spreadsheet. Proposed list price, $1,249,000. Realtor commission, $74,940. Notes at the bottom in the realtor's voice. Seller requests expedited closing. No open house privacy concerns. Privacy concerns. They didn't want the neighbors to see the sign. They didn't want me to see the sign. I took screenshots of every page, forwarded everything to Martin Hale. My hands were steady for the screenshots. They shook after I pressed send. Martin called me within the hour. He was usually measured the kind of attorney who speaks in paragraphs, not sentences. This time he was direct. They're moving faster than I expected, Mrs. Thornton. We need to accelerate. I sat at my kitchen table, the same table where I'd heard Grant's voice through the phone saying I should be put away, the same table where Raymond and I had celebrated paying off the mortgage with a bottle of champagne that cost $11. Tell me what to do next, I said. 3 days later, my phone rang. The caller ID said Sunrise Meadows Senior Living. Mrs. Thornton, this is Linda Okafor. I'm the administrator here. I knew that name. I knew that voice. 25 years ago, Linda Okafor was a 27-year-old nursing student doing her clinical rotation on my floor at County General. I taught her how to start an IV on a dehydrated infant. I taught her how to read a monitor without looking at it. I taught her that the most important vital sign is the one nobody's checking. Thelma, I shouldn't be calling you. I could lose my position for this. Then why are you? Because I trained under you. I owe you more than my job title. She paused. I could hear her close a door. Someone submitted an admission application for you. Effective date, August 15th. She took a breath. Your son is listed as your healthcare proxy. Another pause. There's a document attached to signed proxy authorization with your name on it. Silence. 3 seconds. Then she said it. The signature on that proxy, it's not yours, is it? No, I said. It's not. I'm gonna flag this internally. You need an attorney, Thelma, today. I have one. She exhaled. Relief. Good. I'll send you a copy of what they filed, unofficially. I hung up. I walked to Raymond's rose garden. The afternoon light came through the bushes in slats, the same gold light that fell across Raymond's face when he'd kneel in the dirt with his pruning shears, the same light that hit Grant's hair when he was 8 years old chasing the dog through the yard. All that light still falling on the same ground as if nothing had changed. I sat on the bench, touched my nursing badge. Then I called Rosemary. They forged my healthcare proxy, Rosemary. My own son signed a document saying he has the right to decide where I live. Rosemary was quiet for 5 seconds. When she spoke, her voice was granite. Then we file tomorrow. Martin Hale's office was on the second floor of a brick building downtown. No elevator. I took the stairs. 67 years old, and I can still take stairs 2 at a time. I wanted him to see that. He had the forged proxy laid out on his desk. A single sheet. My name typed at the top. A signature at the bottom that looked like mine the way a photocopy looks like a photograph, close but flat. No pressure in the pen strokes, no muscle memory. Mrs. Thornton forging a healthcare proxy is a Class D felony in this state. He tapped the deed amendment. And this clause your husband added, it means they cannot sell your house without you sitting across from a notary. He laid out the plan on a yellow legal pad. 4 points. I like that. Nurses work in numbered steps. 1, file APS report. Rosemary would co-sign as the referring professional. 2, notify the title company of the deed clause. 3, let the sale proceed to the point where it can be voided maximum legal exposure for everyone involved. 4, begin an irrevocable trust transfer to the charity of my choice. I want to donate the house to County General's Pediatric Wing, I said, in my husband's name, the Raymond Thornton Memorial Fund. Martin put down his pen. You're sure that's $1.2 million? Raymond spent his last days in that building. I spent 35 years in that building. It's going where it belongs. He nodded slowly, wrote it down. They wanted to sell my home. I decided to give it away. There's a difference. One is theft, the other is a choice. And I had spent my entire life watching other people make choices for me. If you've ever sat in your own home and realized someone was measuring it for their future while you were still living in it, you know what that silence feels like. If this story is hitting close to home, drop a comment. Tell me. Because you're not alone in that kitchen. Judith called on a Thursday afternoon, full charm. The voice she must have used on clients walking through open houses, warm, confident closing. Thelma, I found the most wonderful community, ocean views, book clubs. She let the words settle. A craft room with natural light. You would love it. I let her talk. In the NICU, when a parent is panicking, you don't interrupt. You let them exhaust themselves. Then you give them the information. Judith pivoted to the pitch. The grandchildren need more space, Thelma. And this house, it's a lot for one woman. Her voice softened. What if you fell? What if something happened and no one was here? Interesting. She'd moved from amenities to fear in under 30 seconds. Professional. That's thoughtful of you, Judith. I'll consider it. You will? Oh, Thelma, that's wonderful. She was already planning. I'll send you the brochure. Grant and Paige would be so relieved. Taken care of. The phrase landed like a diagnosis. I hung up. I opened the document Rosemary had given me, a log template for APS cases. I wrote the date, the time, and Judith's exact words. She'd said, "What if you fell?" implying physical decline. She'd said, "No one was here," implying isolation. She'd said Grant and Paige would be relieved, implying burden. Every word was a brick in the case file. 2 hours later, Rosemary's phone buzzed. A forwarded text from a contact at the realtor's office. Judith had texted Paige right after our call. "She's softening," push the timeline. Judith to Paige about me. "She's a nurse. They're trained to accept what the doctor orders. We just need to be the doctors." Trained to accept. I wrote that down too. Grant came alone on a Saturday. That surprised me. He usually brought Paige like a shield. But this time, it was just him pulling into the driveway in his Audi, sitting in the car for a full minute before he got out. I was in the rose garden, on my knees, gloves on, pruning the dead wood from the third bush, the one Raymond planted the year Grant started kindergarten. The sun was on my back. I heard the car door, but I didn't look up. He stood at the edge of the garden. I could feel him watching me. For 30 seconds, I counted because counting is what I do. His posture changed. I could see it in my peripheral vision. His shoulders dropped. His phone hung loose in his hand. He was looking at me the way he used to look at me when he was 9 years old, and I'd come home from the night shift, and he'd be awake sitting on the stairs, waiting. He pulled out his phone. I could see the screen from where I knelt. My contact photo me in my scrubs holding a newborn smiling. The photo was 8 years old. His thumb hovered over the call button, which was absurd because I was 10 feet away. He wasn't going to call. He was looking at the photo, remembering something. The woman who drove him to SAT prep at 6 a.m. on her way home from the hospital, who fell asleep at his graduation and he'd been embarrassed. Then his phone buzzed, a text. He blinked. The moment passed like a cloud shadow. He put the phone in his pocket, walked into the garden. "Mom, we need to talk about the house deed for insurance." I looked up, dirt on my gloves. "Of course, sweetheart, let me clean up." I saw it, the flicker. The boy who used to bring me dandelions from the backyard. He was in there for about 4 seconds. Then he put his phone away. They came together on a Sunday, coordinated, Grant in a pressed shirt, Paige in her good earrings, Judith carrying a leather portfolio like she was walking into a listing appointment. I'd set the table for 4, pot roast, green beans from the garden, Raymond's recipe. I wanted the house to smell like a home they were planning to sell. They sat, they ate. They made small talk about Lily's school play and the weather. Paige complimented the roast. Grant asked for seconds. Judith smiled so hard I could see the tendons in her neck. Then Paige set down her fork. "We've been thinking about your future, Thelma, as a family." There it was, the pre-rehearsed opener. I'd heard 1,000 versions of it from families in the hospital. "We've been thinking about Dad's care. We've been discussing Mom's options. Always we, never I." Judith slid a glossy brochure across the table. Sunrise Meadows Senior Living, full color. A photograph of silver-haired people playing croquet on a lawn that had never seen a dandelion. "They have a wonderful program for independent seniors," Judith said. I picked up the brochure. I already knew every detail of this facility. I knew the room rates, the staffing ratios, the inspection scores. I knew the administrator personally because I'd trained her 25 years ago. Then Paige leaned forward. "You've had a wonderful life in this house, Thelma. It's time you let the family benefit from what you've built." Judith's words, coming out of Paige's mouth. 9 words rearranged but not disguised. I looked at the brochure. I looked at my son. I smiled. "This does look lovely. Let me think about it this week." I walked them to the door, waved goodbye, watched the taillights disappear down Birchwood Lane. Then I called Martin Hale. They just handed me the brochure. How long until the trust transfer is finalized? Martin, 72 hours. The countdown started. Monday morning, Martin Hale called the title company at 9:04 a.m. I know because he billed in 6-minute increments and told me later. He presented the deed clause, 2 paragraphs, Raymond's handwriting in the margins. The title company's attorney read it twice. Then she read it a 3rd time. "The surviving grantee's in-person notarized signature is required. The power of attorney on file is insufficient." She paused. "We have no record of a notarized signature from Mrs. Thornton." The sale was flagged for review. Closing had been scheduled for the following Tuesday. It wouldn't happen. Martin told me all of this from his office while I sat in the NICU holding a 3-day-old girl with jaundice. I'd done everything I could. Now the machinery worked on its own. That same afternoon, Rosemary filed the APS report. She'd spent 30 years writing these. She knew what an investigator needed: dates, direct quotes, documented pattern. The forged healthcare proxy was attached as primary evidence. Linda Okafor provided a sworn statement from Sunrise Meadows confirming the proxy had been submitted without my knowledge or consent. The case number was assigned. I wrote it on the inside of my wrist with a ballpoint pen, the way I used to write room numbers during rounds. Some numbers you carry on your body until you don't need them anymore. Martin began the irrevocable trust transfer that afternoon. The receiving entity, the Raymond Thornton Memorial Fund at County General Hospital, the Asset One residential property at 742 Birchwood Lane, appraised value $1,240,000. I held the baby in the NICU. She weighed 4 pounds. She gripped my index finger with her whole hand. I rocked her and waited for the paperwork to move through the system, the way blood moves through an IV line, steady, measured, irreversible. I started packing on a Tuesday. Grant was at work. Paige was at a client's house measuring someone else's walls for once. I had 8 hours. Raymond's tools went first: his socket set, his level, the handsaw he'd used to build the bookshelves in the living room when Grant was 4. I wrapped each one in newspaper and laid them in a box, the way you'd swaddle an infant tight, careful, supporting the weight. Then his letters, 41 years of birthday cards, each one signed the same way, Love R. I packed the photos next. Our wedding, 1985 me, in a dress I'd sewn myself, Raymond in his father's suit. Grant's first birthday, Grant's graduation, Raymond in his mail carrier uniform grinning beside a truck he'd driven for 2 decades. The cottage by the lake was waiting. $1,200 a month from Raymond's life insurance fund, the $150,000 I'd never touched because the house was paid off and I didn't need it. Small place, clean. 1 bedroom, a kitchen window that faced the water, and by the front porch, a patch of bare dirt where nothing grew yet. I dug up 1 rose bush, the 4th from the left, the one Raymond planted the year Grant turned 10. I wrapped the root ball in burlap and set it in the passenger seat of my car like cargo I couldn't afford to lose. The last thing I took was Lily's drawing from the fridge. I peeled it off gently. The tape left a rectangle of clean white on the yellowed surface. I held it for a moment. Grandma Thelma's house. Then I put it in my jacket pocket. At night, the house still looked occupied. I'd set the lights on timers. The porch lamp clicked on at 6, the kitchen light at 7, the bedroom at 9, a house pretending someone still lived there. Grant received the email on a Wednesday. A pre-closing confirmation from the title company standard procedure sent automatically before the final review was complete. It looked like good news because he didn't read past the subject line. He called Paige from his car. It's done. $1.2 million. Closing Tuesday. Paige's voice went high and thin the way it did when she was excited. She called Judith before she'd even hung up with Grant. Judith picked up on the first ring. "Start the condo renovation," Paige told her. "It's happening." I know this because Rosemary's contact at the realtor's office forwarded the chain. They'd been sloppy from the beginning, and sloppy people don't get more careful when they think they've won. Grant booked the trip that night. Scottsdale, a resort with a pool that overlooked the desert. 4 nights. $3,800 on a credit card that was already carrying $42,000 in debt. He texted me Thursday morning. "Just a quick business conference, Mom. Back Monday." I replied, "Have a good trip, sweetheart. I'll water the garden." He didn't hear what I meant. He heard what he wanted to hear. That's the difference between a nurse and a salesman. A nurse listens for what the patient isn't saying. A salesman listens for the close. What Grant didn't check the title company had left a voicemail 2 hours after the confirmation email. "Mr. Thornton, we've identified an issue with the deed. Please call us at your earliest convenience." The voicemail was sorted into his spam folder by an algorithm that didn't know the difference between convenience and catastrophe. He wouldn't hear it until Monday. By then, there would be nothing left to call about. I learned afterward from Martin Hale what happened while Grant and Paige ordered room service in Arizona. The APS investigator opened the file on her desk. Rosemary's documentation filled 14 pages, dates in the left column, direct quotes in the center, source verification on the right. 30 years of elder abuse casework had taught Rosemary how to build a file that read like a verdict before the hearing started. The investigator reviewed the forged healthcare proxy. She compared the signature to my verified signature on file with County General's HR department. 35 years of annual employment, forms each one signed in the same steady hand. The proxy signature was close, but close in forgery cases is the same as guilty. The DA's office was notified Thursday afternoon. A preliminary investigation was opened under the state's Elder Financial Exploitation Statute. Judith Calloway was named as a co-conspirator. Rosemary's notes were specific. Judith's direct statements to me, the contributed to your future line her role, coaching Grant and Paige through every step. The investigator highlighted one entry. Subject Calloway referred to the victim as useful in overheard conversation. 3 letters were prepared, one for Grant Thornton, one for Paige Thornton, one for Judith Calloway. Each letter requested the recipient appear for questioning at the county office within 10 business days. The letters were mailed Friday, first class. The Postal Service Raymond had worked for 41 years would deliver them by Tuesday. Thursday night, the lake cottage. Rain on the roof, a soft, steady sound like an IV drip hitting a collection bag. I sat at Raymond's desk, the oak one he'd built from a kit the year we got married. I'd rescued it from the house between loads of boxes. The surface still had a ring stain from his coffee mug, a ghost of his morning routine. I couldn't bring myself to sand away. I picked up a pen, a plain ballpoint, blue ink. First draft, 2 pages. I wrote everything. The phone call, the 14 minutes, Judith's laugh, the proxy, the listing, the years, all of it. When I finished, I read it back. Too much, too angry, too many words doing the work that silence does better. I crossed it out, started again. Second draft, 1 page. I listed facts and consequences. It read like a legal brief, accurate but bloodless. Martin could have written it. That wasn't the point. I needed Grant to hear his mother, not her attorney. I crossed that out too. Third draft, 7 lines, each one a fact, no accusations, no explanations, just what happened and what would happen next. The way a discharge note reads, patient status treatment administered outcome. I called Rosemary, read it to her over the phone. She was quiet for 10 seconds. I could hear her breathing. That'll do it. I folded the note once, placed it in a plain white envelope, wrote Grant on the outside in the handwriting I'd used on 35 years of patient charts. I drove to the house one last time. The rose garden had a gap where the 4th bush used to be bare dirt, a small crater. The porch light clicked on as I walked up. Timer, 6 p.m., right on schedule. I taped the envelope to the front door at eye level. Then I walked to my car. I've written discharge notes for thousands of patients. This was the hardest one. If someone you love has ever looked at your home and seen a dollar sign instead of a front porch, if they've ever talked about your future without including you in the conversation, keep listening. Because this story isn't over, and what comes next is the part I've been building toward since the beginning. Friday, Saturday, Sunday, 3 days of silence. Grant and Paige were in Scottsdale. I followed it on Paige's social media the way a nurse follows a chart checking vitals, noting changes, saying nothing. Poolside photos, champagne in fluted glasses. Paige posted a story, hard work pays off, #blessed. The champagne was $38 a glass. I'd looked up the resort's drink menu. I was at the cottage. I planted the rose bush by the front porch, dug the hole with my bare hands because I'd left the good shovel at the house. The soil was dark and loose, nothing like the clay at Birchwood Lane. The bush looked small in the new dirt, unmoored, the way everything looks when you transplant it. I made tea, chamomile, sat on the porch and watched the lake go flat in the late afternoon light, called Rosemary. Is everything filed? Everything. Martin confirmed the trust transfer is complete. A PS is active. The title company voided the sale this morning. Good. That was all I said. There wasn't more to say. I held my nursing badge, turned it over in my fingers. The photo was from 2006 me at 47, dark hair, tired eyes, the ghost of a smile. I'd clocked in at 10:45 every night for 35 years. Badge in, badge out. I always thought the hardest part was the shift. I was wrong. The hardest part was knowing when the shift was over. Martin called Sunday evening. His voice had the careful calm of a surgeon delivering results. The Raymond Thornton Memorial Fund at County General has formally accepted the property donation. The irrevocable trust is recorded with the county. As of 4 p.m. today, the house at 742 Birchwood Lane belongs to the hospital. He paused. It cannot be reversed by anyone. And the DA. Letters went out Friday. Grant Page and Judith should receive them by Tuesday. I thanked him, said goodbye, hung up. I walked to the front porch. The rose bush was still there, small, bare-rooted, leaning slightly east. I filled a watering can from the kitchen sink and gave it a long drink. The water pooled around the base and soaked into the dark soil. I stood there until it drained. The house that Grant tried to sell was gone. Not demolished, not abandoned, transferred. It belonged now to the pediatric wing where I'd spent 35 years walking hallways at 3 a.m. It carried the name of the man who protected me from beyond a fireproof box under the bed. Raymond Thornton, mailman, husband, the man who added 2 paragraphs to a deed because he delivered enough eviction notices to know what sons could do. The sun went down behind the tree line. The lake turned from blue to black. I carried the watering can inside, set it by the door, turned on the lamp Raymond's sister had given us for our 30th anniversary. It was done. All of it. Every piece in place. Every document filed. Every door closed except the one with a note taped to it, waiting. I pieced together what happened next from the voicemails, Martin's updates, and Rosemary's contacts at the realtor's office. Monday morning, 8 a.m., the machinery fired. Martin Hale's office contacted the title company for the final time. The deed clause was presented in a formal legal notice. The sale was voided. The buyer's earnest money, $42,000, was returned with a 3-page explanation citing the surviving grantee provision. The buyer's attorney called the buyer called the realtor called Grant. Voicemail, again. She called again, voicemail. She left a message. Mr. Thornton, we need to discuss the property at 742 Birchwood. There's been a complication with the deed. Please call me immediately. Grant's phone was on silent. He and Paige were at the airport in Phoenix standing in the security line, sunburned and loose. Paige was texting Judith about paint swatches for the condo renovation, cloud white versus pale linen for the master bath. Judith had opinions. Judith always had opinions. Grant saw the missed call when they reached the gate. He didn't listen to the voicemail. There were 2 others from the title company stacked below it like lab results no one had read. I'll call her back tomorrow, he told Paige. Probably just paperwork. There was also 1 call from a number he didn't recognize, a 614 area code, the county DA's office. No voicemail, they preferred to deliver certain information in person. Grant put his phone in his jacket pocket. Paige leaned against his shoulder. The gate agent called their boarding group. They walked down the jetway into a plane that would carry them home to a house that no longer belonged to anyone in their family. 37,000 feet up somewhere over New Mexico, Grant slept. His phone sat in the seatback pocket collecting notifications he hadn't read. The flight landed at 4:47 p.m. Grant turned on his phone in the jetway. 6 missed calls from the realtor, 2 from the title company, 1 from the unrecognized number, again the 614, a voicemail notification from each. He scrolled through them the way you'd flip through a stack of bills, fast looking for the one that matters. "What's wrong?" Paige asked. She was pulling her carry-on from the overhead bin. "Nothing, just work stuff." The parking garage was cold after 4 days of desert air. Grant loaded the suitcases, started the car, connected his phone to the Bluetooth. He played the realtor's voicemail on speaker. "Mr. Thornton, the title company, discovered a deed clause requiring your mother's in-person notarized signature for any transfer. The power of attorney you provided was insufficient." A pause. The realtor's voice tightened. "The sale has been voided. I'm sorry, but you should probably talk to a lawyer." Paige stared at the dashboard. Grant called the realtor back. She picked up on the second ring. "That's not possible," he said. "We had everything in order." "Mr. Thornton, the title company, also received a formal notice from an elder law firm representing your mother. I can't say more. You need to speak with your attorney." "What elder law firm my mother doesn't have?" "I've said all I can, Mr. Thornton." The line went dead. Grant's hands tightened on the steering wheel. The leather creaked. Paige looked at his knuckles, white, ridged the tendons standing out like cables. She'd never seen his hands look like that. "Grant, what is happening?" He didn't answer. He pulled out of the garage and turned onto the highway, 26 miles to Birchwood Lane. They turned onto Birchwood Lane at 5:38 p.m. The streetlights were on. The neighbors' houses glowed warm. The Hendersons had their sprinkler going. The Patel kids were riding bikes in the cul-de-sac. 742 was dark. No porch light. The timer had run its last cycle 2 days ago, and I hadn't been there to reset it. The curtains were open, every window visible from the driveway. The rooms were empty, not ransacked, not damaged, just empty. The walls showed rectangles of brighter paint where photos had hung. The coat hooks by the door were bare. Paige said it first. "Why is it so dark? Then is she even home?" Grant parked in the driveway, left the engine running. He walked to the front door. His shoes sounded loud on the porch boards, the same boards Raymond had replaced in 2011, the same boards Lily used to jump off into the grass. There was a folded note taped at eye level, a plain white envelope, one word on the outside in blue ink, Grant. He knew the handwriting. He'd grown up reading it on permission slips and grocery lists and birthday cards signed Love Mom. The same careful, precise lettering she'd used on 35 years of patient charts, small capitals, uniform spacing every letter, deliberate. He pulled the envelope off the door. The tape made a sound like a bandage being removed. He opened it, unfolded the note, read it in the light from the Hendersons' porch because his mother's porch was dark. He read it again. Paige climbed out of the car. She left her door open. The dome light threw a yellow wedge across the lawn. "What does it say?" She was walking toward him. "Grant, faster now. Grant." He looked up from the paper. His face had the expression I'd seen on families in the hospital when I delivered news that changed the math of their lives. Not anger. Not yet. Something before anger. The moment the body understands what the mind hasn't processed. He handed her the note without speaking. The note read, "Dear Grant, the deed to this house requires my in-person notarized signature for any transfer. Your attorney should have checked. The title company voided the sale this morning. The healthcare proxy you submitted to Sunrise Meadows has been forwarded to the district attorney's office. I passed my cognitive evaluation with a perfect score, Dr. Kaplan at County General, if you'd like to verify. An adult protective services case has been opened. Rosemary Delgado is the assigned advocate. The house has been donated to the Raymond Thornton Memorial Fund at County General's Pediatric Wing. Your father spent his last years in that building. I spent 35 years in that building. The home you tried to sell will now help children who actually need care. Someone once told me it was time I contributed to someone else's future. I agreed. I just chose whose. I love you, but I will not be managed. Mom. Paige read it. Her lips moved on each line. She got to the third paragraph and her mouth opened. She reached the fifth and she screamed. Not a word, just a sound, high raw, the kind of sound that makes neighbors look up from their sprinklers. Grant took his phone out of his pocket. He called me. No answer. He called again. No answer. Again. 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 14 calls, the same number of minutes he'd left the line open in March while they planned my future without me. I watched the screen light up at the cottage. I let each one ring through to voicemail. The recording said, "This is Thelma. Leave a message." He didn't leave one. Not on the first call, not on the 14th. I contributed to Grant's future for 43 years. I just chose to stop. Paige read the note one more time. Then she sat down on the porch steps of a house that now belonged to a children's hospital and put her head in her hands. Grant called Judith at 6:14 p.m. She picked up already crying. If they named me Grant, they named me. I got a letter from the district attorney. Her voice cracked. They're calling it conspiracy. I need a lawyer. Do you understand? I need a lawyer. Grant stood on the porch. The note dangled from Paige's hand like something dead. Judith's voice came through the phone speaker in fragments, syllables breaking apart under the weight of consequences she hadn't calculated. Paige was doing math. I know because Paige always did math. It was the only language that calmed her. No house, $1.2 million gone. Not lost, given away. Credit cards maxed. The Scottsdale trip, $3,800. The second mortgage on their own house, $94,000. Grant's income uncertain once the DA investigation hit his employer's background check system. She said the numbers out loud. Each one landed on the porch like a dropped instrument. Grant sank onto the steps. He sat where Lily used to sit, waiting for the ice cream truck. He looked at the rose garden. There was a hole, the fourth spot from the left. Bare dirt, a small crater where roots had been already filling with dead leaves. He stared at it the way a patient stares at an empty bed in the next room, knowing someone was there, knowing they're gone, not understanding how both things can be true. His mother's phone went to voicemail. "This is Thelma. Leave a message." He held the phone against his forehead. He didn't leave a message. For the first time in 43 years, there was no one to call who could fix this. No night shift nurse coming home at 7 a.m. to find him on the stairs and carry him back to bed. The porch was dark. The house was dark. The woman who'd kept the lights on for 36 years had taken her last box and left. 3 weeks later, Grant and Paige were renting a one-bedroom apartment in Westfield, the next town over, where no one from Birchwood Lane would see them at the grocery store. Lily slept on a pull-out sofa in the living room. She didn't ask about Grandma's house. She asked once, and Paige said, "We'll talk about it later." They hadn't talked about it later. Judith's condo renovation was canceled. The contractor kept the deposit, $8,000, non-refundable. Her savings were going to a defense attorney named Burke, who charged $400 an hour and didn't make promises. Burke told Judith the forged proxy was the problem. Everything else, the listing, the nursing home application, the coordinated campaign, was damaging. But the proxy was the felony. Grant was placed on administrative leave from his company. The DA investigation had triggered a flag in a routine background check. His manager called him into the office. "We're not letting you go, Grant. We're just pausing." Grant knew what pausing meant. He'd used the same word on sales calls when the deal was dead. He drove past 742 Birchwood Lane one morning. He told himself he wouldn't. He did. A banner hung from the porch. Professional, navy blue with white lettering. Future home of the Raymond Thornton Pediatric Resource Center County General Hospital. Below it, a smaller sign, the kind real estate agents stake in front yards. Generously donated by the Thornton family. Grant sat in his car for 20 minutes. The engine idled. The banner moved in the breeze. He read the smaller sign 3 times. Technically, it was true. The Thornton family had donated the property, just not the Thorntons who'd planned to profit from it. He put the car in drive. He didn't go inside. There was nothing inside to go to. The rosebush bloomed in June, first buds since the transplant. Small pink, tight as a fist, then open, full the same color they'd been in Raymond's garden at Birchwood Lane. The soil at the cottage was better than I'd expected, looser, more forgiving. My nursing badge hangs on a hook by the front door now, not a keychain anymore, a decoration. The photo on it is 18 years old me at 49, dark hair, tired eyes, a smile that says, "I had somewhere to be in 30 seconds. I don't have anywhere to be in 30 seconds anymore. The shift is over." I volunteer 3 days a week, Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. I started a reading circle for the pediatric patients, picture books for the little ones, chapter books for the kids who are there long enough to need chapters. I read in the same voice I used for Grant when he was small, steady, warm, no rush. A letter arrived from County General in May. I opened it at the kitchen table with my morning coffee. Mrs. Thornton, the board voted unanimously. The night shift break room in the pediatric wing has been named the Thelma Thornton Room. 35 years of night shifts deserve a nameplate. I cried. First time since all of this began. Not from sadness, not from anger, from being seen. 35 years of walking hallways that were empty by design, and someone finally put my name on a door. I put the letter on the mantel next to Raymond's photo, next to Lily's drawing, Grandma Thelma's house, which I keep because the house Lily drew was never about bricks. I spent 35 years walking hospital hallways at 3 a.m. so other people's children could heal. The night shift never made me weak. It made me quiet. And quiet is just strength that hasn't spoken yet. That's my story. 35 years, 1 phone call, and a rose bush that blooms in a new garden. If this story reminded you to check who has the right to speak for you, do it today. Share this with someone who needs it. Subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.